Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Key concepts in disability discourse analysis. Disability studies in discourse analysis delves into the intricate ways in which language shapes and reflects societal perceptions of disability. This field scrutinizes the discourse surrounding disability across various platforms such as media, policy, and everyday interactions, aiming to unravel the complex interplay between language and the social constructs of disability. By understanding key concepts like the construction of disability, normalization, and the representation of identity and agency, scholars can identify and challenge the entrenched norms and power dynamics that influence how disability is viewed and experienced in society. 1. Discourse. In the context of disability studies and discourse analysis, discourse refers to written and spoken communication, including the language used in everyday life, media, policy, academia, and other social interactions. Discourse is a powerful tool for constructing social realities, shaping how ideas and concepts are understood and acted upon in society. Understanding discourse is crucial for analyzing how societal constructs around disability are formed, maintained, and potentially dismantled. 1. Key concepts in disability discourse analysis. Definition of discourse. Discourse encompasses all forms of communicated language, whether it's through text, speech, or symbolic communication, such as signs and symbols. In discourse analysis, the focus is on how language is used, and what it accomplishes within a social context. This includes how subjects and objects are constructed through language, the power dynamics embedded in language choices, and the societal norms that are communicated through discourse. Relevance in disability studies. In disability studies, discourse analysis is used to examine how language constructs and influences the concept of disability itself. This involves analyzing how disability is talked about and represented in various domains such as literature, the media, legal texts, medical discourse, and everyday conversation. 2. The role of discourse in constructing disability. Creating and reinforcing norms. Discourse contributes to the creation and reinforcement of norms regarding what is considered normal and abnormal in society. Through language, certain bodies and ways of being are categorized as disabled, often implying a deviation from a norm. This categorization can perpetuate exclusion and discrimination, but it can also be a site of resistance where norms are contested and redefined. Power and identity. Discourse shapes identities, how people see themselves and others. For individuals with disabilities, the language used to describe them can influence their social identity and self-concept. Discourse analysis reveals how power operates in these constructions, such as through the medicalization of disability, which often portrays individuals as needing to be fixed or cured. Legitimation of social practices. Language is used to legitimize certain social practices and policies. In the context of disability, discourse analysis can uncover how policies are justified or contested through specific uses of language. This includes examining how legislative and institutional discourses either support or undermine the rights and inclusion of people with disabilities. Resistance and change. Discourse is not only about maintaining power structures, it's also a medium for challenging them. Analyzing disability discourse reveals how people with disabilities and their allies use language to resist marginalization and advocate for social change. This includes reclaiming derogatory terms, promoting inclusive language, and reshaping narratives around disability to emphasize ability and empowerment rather than limitation. Discourse analysis within disability studies provides a rich and nuanced tool for understanding how disability is constructed and experienced in society. By examining the role of language in creating, maintaining, and challenging societal constructs around disability, scholars and advocates can work towards more inclusive and equitable social structures. This analysis not only highlights the significance of language in shaping perceptions and experiences of disability but also underscores the potential for transformative change through strategic uses of discourse. 2. Disability discourse. Disability discourse refers to the ways in which disability is talked about, understood, and represented across different social contexts. This discourse is not uniform but varies widely depending on cultural, institutional, and individual factors. Analyzing disability discourse helps reveal how definitions and perceptions of disability are constructed and how these constructions affect the lives of people with disabilities. This analysis is crucial for understanding the social implications of language use in various settings such as media, policy, healthcare, education, and everyday interactions. 1. Key aspects of disability discourse. Medical versus social models of disability. Medical model. In this model, disability is often talked about as a problem or deficiency located in the individual's body or mind, which needs to be cured or managed. The discourse surrounding the medical model typically emphasizes treatment, intervention, and often perpetuates a view of disabled individuals as dependent or in need of care. Social model. Contrasting with the medical model, the social model frames disability as a result of societal barriers and attitudes that hinder individuals with impairments. The discourse here focuses on systemic change, accessibility, and rights, promoting a view of people with disabilities as active, capable members of society. Institutional discourse. Institutions like schools, workplaces, and government bodies have their own specific ways of talking about and managing disability. For instance, in educational settings, the discourse may focus on special education needs, inclusion strategies, and accommodations. Analyzing these discourses reveals how institutional policies and practices can either support or restrict the participation of disabled people. Media representation. Media plays a critical role in shaping public perceptions of disability. Disability discourse in media often involves stereotypes, such as the disabled person as an object of pity or as a source of inspiration, that can have profound effects on societal attitudes. Discourse analysis helps identify these patterns and their impact on public opinion. Everyday language and interaction. The way disability is discussed in everyday conversation can reflect and reinforce cultural attitudes and biases. This includes the language used to describe disability, the jokes made at the expense of disabled people, and even the casual omission of disability from certain discussions where it is relevant. Narratives and personal stories. Personal narratives and stories shared by individuals with disabilities are a powerful aspect of disability discourse. These narratives can challenge dominant models of understanding disability, offering alternative perspectives that highlight the diversity and complexity of living with a disability. 2. Analytical approaches in disability discourse analysis. Critical discourse analysis, CDA. This method is used to examine the power dynamics within disability discourse, looking at how language contributes to social inequality. Narrative analysis. This approach analyzes the stories told by and about disabled individuals to understand how identities and experiences are constructed through narrative. Ethnographic approaches. Observing and documenting how disability is discussed and enacted in everyday life provides insights into the contextual and cultural nuances of disability discourse. Understanding disability discourse across different social contexts allows for a deeper insight into how societal norms and values shape the experiences of disabled people. This knowledge can drive more informed and effective advocacy, policymaking, and social practices that genuinely reflect and accommodate the needs and rights of disabled individuals. Through discourse analysis, scholars and activists can challenge existing prejudices and work towards a more inclusive society where the diversity of human experiences is acknowledged and valued. 3. Ableism in language. Ableism in language refers to the ways in which language use can perpetuate discrimination against and misunderstanding of people with disabilities. Analyzing everyday language and media for biases and stereotypes is crucial in disability discourse analysis because it reveals the subtle and overt ways that societal attitudes towards disability are formed and reinforced. This analysis helps to identify and challenge the linguistic patterns that marginalize or devalue individuals based on their abilities. 1. Understanding ableism in language. Ableism in language can manifest in several forms, from overt derogatory terms to more subtle expressions and assumptions that reflect and perpetuate societal biases. These linguistic patterns contribute to the stigmatization of disability and affect the social inclusion of people with disabilities. 2. Key areas for analysis. Pejorative language and euphemisms. Direct insults. The use of outright derogatory terms related to disability is an obvious form of ableism. These terms are often used to insult or demean individuals, regardless of whether they have disabilities. Euphemisms. Language that seeks to obscure or soften the reality of disability can also be problematic. While sometimes intended to be polite, euphemisms can perpetuate the notion that disability is something shameful or to be avoided in direct discussion. Medicalization and pathologization. Disability discourse often involves medical terminology that implies illness or a need for cure. This framing can diminish the identity and agency of disabled individuals by focusing solely on their medical conditions rather than their full lives and experiences. Stereotypes and tropes in media. Media representations of disability frequently rely on stereotypes such as the supercrip, a person with a disability depicted as heroic solely because of their disability, or the victim, a person with a disability depicted as deserving pity. These tropes can limit the public's understanding of the true diversity and complexity of living with disabilities. Invisibility and omission. The absence of disability in discourse can also be a form of ableism. When people with disabilities are excluded from media narratives, policy discussions, and everyday conversations, it implies that their experiences are not important or relevant to the general population. Infantilization. Language that treats adults with disabilities as if they are children, regardless of their age, undermines their status as full adults with rights and capabilities. This can manifest in talking down to individuals with disabilities or making decisions for them without their input. 3. Analytical approaches. Critical discourse analysis, CDA. This methodology is employed to uncover power relations and social inequality embedded in language practices, helping to highlight how certain uses of language can marginalize or disadvantage people with disabilities. Content analysis. Used in media studies, this method quantitatively and qualitatively analyzes the presence, representations, and absences of disability in media texts to understand how societal narratives about disability are constructed and perpetuated. Analyzing ableism in language is essential for challenging and changing harmful societal attitudes toward disability. By identifying and critiquing the ways in which language can subtly and overtly discriminate against people with disabilities, disability discourse analysis contributes to broader efforts to promote social justice and equality. This work not only helps in raising awareness among speakers and media creators but also fosters a more inclusive environment where all individuals are respected and valued regardless of their abilities. Conclusion. In disability studies and discourse analysis, the examination of discourse serves as a critical tool for understanding and challenging the societal constructs that define and often limit the experiences of individuals with disabilities. Through methodologies such as critical discourse analysis, conversational analysis, and narrative analysis, this field not only reveals how disability is constructed through language but also offers a pathway to reshape these narratives towards more inclusive and equitable representations. By critically analyzing the roles of normalization, identity, and agency in the discourse on disability, scholars advocate for a transformative approach that promotes a more nuanced understanding of disability, moving beyond stereotypes to embrace the full diversity of human experience. Frequently asked questions. What is meant by discourse in disability studies and discourse analysis? In this context, discourse refers to written and spoken communication that includes everyday language, media content, policy discussions, and academic dialogue. It is a key tool for constructing social realities, shaping how disability is understood and acted upon in society. How does discourse construct disability? Discourse constructs disability by shaping norms around what is considered normal and abnormal. It influences how disabilities are categorized and discussed in various social spheres, impacting societal attitudes and policies. What is the significance of analyzing normalization and deviance in disability discourse? Analyzing these concepts helps reveal how societal norms are maintained or challenged. It looks at how language defines normalcy and deviation, influencing inclusion or exclusion of people with disabilities from various social roles and opportunities. How does discourse analysis address identity and agency in the context of disability? Discourse analysis explores how individuals with disabilities use language to construct their identities and express agency. It examines both empowering and disempowering narratives to understand how disabled individuals see themselves and are seen by others. What role does discourse play in terms of accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities? Discourse can facilitate or hinder accessibility and inclusion by influencing policies, public communications, and media representations. Analyzing discourse helps identify how language either supports or obstructs the participation of disabled individuals in society. How does critical discourse analysis, CDA, function within disability studies? CDA analyzes the power relations in texts and conversations about disability, focusing on how power affects representation and treatment of disabled individuals. It helps understand the dynamics of exclusion and discrimination embedded in language. What is the importance of conversational analysis in this field? Conversational analysis focuses on how disability is constructed in everyday interactions. It reveals implicit norms and expectations that govern societal perceptions of disability, showing how these perceptions are perpetuated or challenged in daily communication. How does narrative analysis contribute to disability studies in discourse analysis? Narrative analysis examines personal and public stories about disability to explore how these narratives shape and are shaped by broader cultural stories. It highlights the roles of empowerment and victimization in shaping public and personal perceptions of disability. What practical implications does this field have for policymaking? Insights from disability studies in discourse analysis can inform more inclusive and supportive legislative practices by highlighting how current discourses around disability shape and are shaped by laws and policies. How does media representation affect societal perceptions of disability? Media representation significantly shapes public perceptions by either reinforcing stereotypes or providing more accurate, diverse portrayals of disability. Analyzing media discourse can guide advocacy for better representations in media.